Good morning. So here I am in one of my favourite multitasking activities, going outside, having a walk, experiencing nature, extending my senses into the environment and making a film for you. So this one is all to do with health and healing. And I do want to thank my friend Donna for giving me some really interesting insights which come into this. So what I want to start off by doing is to say this. Health. There's an old school attitude towards health and disease, and I want to mention that first of all. So generally speaking, particularly these days, a lot of people are frightened by microbes, viruses, bacteria, fungi, and the attitude seems to be that these malevolent little creatures, and they're kind of lurking in all sorts of places, maybe under one of these leaves, maybe on the toilet seat, maybe in the kitchen, maybe in a little dirty pile of litter somewhere lying about, or horror of horrors, maybe even on your own hands. Well, yeah, the tunnel's open today, that's cool, very nice. So this view is really the one that's held by the majority. Most people reckon that these evil little things are out to get you. And this unsurprisingly breeds fear. Very unsurprising, isn't it, really? So the idea of this is that if you came close to a human being that was contaminated with some kind of a disease, you'd be able to pick it up off them. And that's really what people mean by infection. So people pass diseases from one to the other, and they suffer and they get ill, and either they get better or they die. So this is the old school view. Now I did train as a microbiologist back in the 20th century, and I did learn a lot in the 3 years I was doing all that studying, and I practiced working in medical pathology in hospital laboratories in a small city in East Anglia and a big city called London. Learned a lot from all that, and one of the things that really stuck out in the training that we were doing is what I'm going to tell you now. I do remember Professor Hughes saying this. The thing is, you can expose a population to an infection, and some people get it and some people don't. So why is it some people resist disease and other people succumb? And that stayed with me for a long time. And then I also considered, what about people who, say in the Middle Ages, work with plague victims, or people in third world countries as a severe disease like cholera or smallpox? The nurses and the doctors don't get it. They're working in these hospitals, and here's the thing, because you think, well, the way to make sure you don't get a disease is to stay strong, eat well, rest well, have plenty of sleep. Anyone who knows anything about doctors in these situations and the nurses is they're overworked, underfed, underpaid, and yet they don't get it. This is a common thing. Generally speaking, health practitioners do not come down with the very conditions that affect so many people. So this is it. Why is it? Well, I want to just give you a very simple answer. If you are determined to save lives, when you're going all out to do it, then what you have is a very strong mind. Your mind is so strong, there's no time for fear, There's no time for bollocks. There's no time for aggrandizement. There's no time for selfishness. There's a job to be done and you're doing it. So actually it's very rare indeed that healthcare professionals do get these illnesses. And you can imagine that the very few that do have probably succumbed to fear. And the others have no time for fear. And that is why hospitals are able to be staffed by health workers and such like. And people save lives in these terrible situations in different parts of the third world. So that's something to consider. Could there be a bit of a clue about the power of the mind? The power of the unbending intent? So that's all within what I call the old school paradigm. Terribly old fashioned all that. I mean really old fashioned. So a few years after I finished my training as a microbiologist, and after I stopped working in medical pathology, I did a health counsellor's course. Now I'll be honest with you, the microbiology degree was 3 years, health counsellor's course of 3 months. It was 7 days a week, mind, but it was only 3 months. And yeah, I learnt more value in those 3 months than I learnt probably in the 18 years up until that time. And so much of that health counsellor's course has stuck with me to this day. So one of the things I remember very vividly is that all the way back in the 1970s, it's a hell of a long time ago when you think about it, all the way back then, people already realised that this germ theory of health and disease was discredited. And I've given you a bit of a clue, because if it really was like these things were out to get you, then they should just be getting everyone, and they don't. So the mind's an important part to play, but I'm now taking it a stage further for you. So here's a completely different idea. Now this is supported by Hawaiian shamanism. Hawaiian shamans say that all issues with health is fundamentally due to stress. And they say that the microbes, like the bacteria, the viruses, whatever, these are not the cause of disease, these are the effects of disease. And there's a term you can use, it's called outworking. It's like the outworking of a condition is the appearance of these microbes. Now that really is interesting. And I'm tempted to go into an academic discourse about spontaneous generation. I will restrain myself, I'll hold myself back from that and stick to the script. So what we learned in a health counsellor's course is that when someone gets the flu or a cold or anything that people label as a disease, actually what the person is having is a discharge. And a discharge is when you are detoxing, when you're releasing toxins. So that's become a more popular term these days, detox, but I find the term discharge to be slightly more accurate actually. So what we have been experiencing in the last recent time is the environment being flooded with all sorts of toxins, and there's a particularly interesting one to do with electricity. Every time in human history there's been a big development with more electricity flooding our environment, there's been a response by the human population in the terms of a discharge labelled as some kind of an illness like the flu. And this goes back a long time, even the introduction of the telegraph ages ago, before the 20th century, that resulted in lots of people getting unwell. And every other development since then, the landline, mains electricity, microwaves, a mobile phone, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, every single one of these has resulted in the human population going just vomiting out, not literally through the mouth, but literally purging their systems of this crap that actually doesn't suit them. And there's a really simple reason. All human beings are electrical. We've got a nervous system which is full of electrical impulses. Now here's the clue. Our electric bodies, our nervous systems, run on very, very low voltage. Now pretty much all the things I'm talking about have got a lot higher voltage, so they're pretty toxic. But the miraculous thing about the human being is the human being's ability to adapt. We are such adaptive beings. We're incredible what we can adapt to. And the more of this toxicity in forms of electromagnetic frequency pollution is dumped into the planet, the more determined we are to discharge the crap. So that's what's going on. So I was sitting in a pub last night and someone was saying, oh yeah, they got 2 5G towers in the town, they're creating another one. Loads of people been ill all over the place. So there's an interesting little link, isn't it? So it seems that human beings are wonderfully adaptive, and we have the capability to discharge what actually doesn't serve us. And this works in all sorts of ways, and one of the really great things you can do is to discharge toxic ideas. Now any idea that leaves you as an innocent victim, prey to circumstances not beyond your control, I suggest to you is a toxic belief system. So one of the things you can do is you can discharge any toxic belief system and replace it with something much more powerful. So rather than being frightened of a little microbe, which is much more likely to be an effect than the cause of any illness, what you can do instead is you can literally give thanks for the fact that we're in this wonderful, beautiful blue planet with these gorgeous trees, the nature, there's lots of human beings, we can have fun, we can do all sorts of things, we can live a life, and anything that doesn't serve us, we've got this automatic mechanism, and it's called discharge. We naturally discharge what doesn't serve us, whether it's electromagnetic radiation, whether it's silly toxic ideas and thoughts, whatever it is. Emotions, same thing goes. The food, if we eat something that's bad for us, so what do? We have a darn good purge, don't we? Head down the toilet and purge your guts up. So this is one of our greatest human superpowers. If it's crap to us, we can throw it out. So I reckon that's all I've got to say about the subject of health, disease, the old model, a more enlightened way of looking at things, and having a darn good discharge, and to realise our 2 great superpowers is our ability to discharge and our ability to adapt, and to do so much more than survive, rather like this magnificent tree in front of me, to thrive. And there's a beautiful bit of sun. Okay, all the love to you.